Alrighty, let's get to our first thing, which is not a story. It's my new thing I'm doing called the Headlines Rundown, where I grab a bunch of stories that are worth being aware of. You should know that they happened, but aren't quite worth, like going in depth and talking about it and all that fun stuff. So first one here, about 100 workers walked out at the Tesla battery plant building site. Now the report, what this article says is that it was a conflict with the contractor and not with Tesla, and that it was largely about them hiring out-of-state workers, which I guess is a thing the union has them, agree not to do, but they went and did anyway. So that's fun. Yeah, probably not going to be a big thing, just an interesting thing that happened. Cardinal admits scandalous response to abuse allegations. This is a very contextless headline. A guy from the Catholic Church, in another place I saw him referred to as one of Pope Francis's top advisors, basically said the way they handled the whole thing was terrible. Did not go as far as to say, so we're going to do something about it. Just sort of lamenting, and God only knows if he has the influence to actually do anything. Pending sales of U.S. existing homes fall by most in 2 years. 2 years is not a very long time. 2 years puts us in 2014, the beginning of 2014. So not really a new story. However, it is, I do think, worth just knowing which way economic indicators of various things are going. Pending sales going down. Actually, let's take a look at this. Is that a good or bad indicator? So contracts to purchase previously owned homes dropped. So yes, that's a bad thing. It means fewer people are trying to buy houses that were previously owned. Of course, big complicated thing, and whatever. Iran's set to elect record number of women into parliament. That's nice. So as many as 20 women likely to win membership in the 290-seat Majlis, including 8 from a Tehran reformist list. The story I've been hearing about the elections, and I have an interesting article saved up to read later, so check the Facebook page, the website, later on in the day to get a sense of how that turned out. But the story seems to be that, much like in America, in the rural areas, hardliners won. In Tehran particularly, I don't know about other cities, reformists and more moderate candidates won. So pretty typical. The story I have saved, its thesis is basically that the elections are rigged, and the fact that people participated in them makes a mockery of democracy. I believe it's actually a much more reasonable argument than that. So again, check back and see what that's all about. Racial bias evident in South Carolina criminal sentences, according to a study. Just one of those can bees think kind of stories. We already knew that, but it's always nice to have evidence for things that we know. China to cut 1.8 million jobs in coal and steel sectors. Again, just one of 1,000 economic indicators. This one is interesting though, for a bunch of reasons. The most interesting one is coal is, the sort of the old way of Chinese energy. They're very much trying to move to hydroelectric, solar, and all the other sort of more renewable resources. Coal, of course, also the worst pollutant. So that one, while it's bad that people have lost their jobs, that one's kind of nice. That one is like, oh good, so coal is winding down and hopefully they're going into other areas. Steel, on the other hand, now again, we've been talking for months about the current commodities crisis. China leading the way in their lack of demand for the metals and resources that are used to build shit. That, of course, is causing problems for people who have shit that they sell, and it's been bad for the economy. So kind of just another little step in that story here. And then, of course, also unemployment, always bad. 1.8 million yuan or million people is a lot of people to lose their jobs. Obviously, it hasn't happened. I'm assuming it's going to happen over a while. If you care, come check out the story. India to pump almost $13 billion into rural development. That's nice. Good for India. Higher incomes for farmers as legislative assembly elections loom in 5 states. India's big push right now, I believe, is to get people to start pooping in toilets. So presumably that's a part of that. They're trying to update their infrastructure, trying to become, a more developed nation. So $13 billion. We're going to talk a lot later on about government spending and stimulus and growth of an economy. But it's just, and when we do, think back to this and how India is doing a pretty good job there with $13 billion getting pumped into, modernizing the countryside. Excuse me. Google self-driving vehicle collides with bus in Silicon Valley. They do say they are partly to blame for this one. So I don't know if this is the first crash. I don't think so. But self-driving cars are one of my sort of, things that I'm really excited about. So this is a little setback on that road. I could write headlines. But yeah. And then the big one that almost was an actual story we talked about, but at the end of the day, it's just not really that interesting. Clarence Thomas shocks Supreme Court by ending 10-year oral argument silence. Clarence Thomas has not spoken. I don't actually remember what the thing was. He was pissed about something. Why doesn't Clarence Thomas talk? Why doesn't Clarence Thomas talk? So after no, that's a different one. Come on, why? Okay, so there isn't really a great explanation of why he doesn't talk. The most compelling explanation he's giving is this: the other justices are really, really chatty. So he thinks they talk too much. However, today he changed his mind. They were hearing a case about gun control law that would strip some other right away. I think it was voting or no, it was if you broke some other law, you'd lose the right to own a gun. And everyone asked their questions, and then all of a sudden he was just like, well, are there any other laws that take away rights for when you break them? Everyone was just like, what? What just happened? Clarence Thomas spoke? Apparently, Justice Roberts swiveled his head in excitement, which is so dramatic. It's the Supreme Court and things are crazy. They're swiveling heads. Whoa! But yeah, and then he went on to ask a bunch more questions. So that's the end of an era. I mean, I remember being a kid watching Boston Public, and they had a Supreme Court episode. And the whole thing was, we're going to get Clarence Thomas to talk. And he makes a joke and calls out Clarence Thomas. And he's like, huh? And he's like, yes, I did it. So that's kind of cool, I guess, that Clarence Thomas is speaking now.